He didn't scream like a man. He screamed like a beast. A deep, guttural sound that didn't come from his throat, but from the belly of a metal monster. His voice, twisted, broken, burned, roared through the nostrils of a bronze bull, echoing into the open air like a creature in agony. But it wasn't a creature. It was a man, trapped, naked, flesh blistering, bones searing, pounding the sides with blackened fists as the fire below turned the air inside into a furnace. He howled until his lungs gave out. And still, the bull screamed for him. Not just a killing machine. This was a theater of death. Every breath, every cry was designed to be heard, to entertain, to horrify, to erase the man and leave only the beast. That was the point. The Brazen Bull wasn't made to punish. It was made to humiliate, to dehumanize, to remind the world what happened when you crossed the wrong man. You might think you've heard of cruelty, hanging, burning, flaying. But this was something else. It didn't just destroy your body, it stole your voice. It turned you into sound, into fire, into fear. And if you're still listening, it's probably because something inside you, like something inside me, can't look away. These stories, they don't just entertain, they haunt. So stay with me. And if you find yourself drawn to these dark corners of history, you know what to do. Subscribe. Because what you're about to hear is not fiction. It happened. And it started with a gift. A gift from an inventor to a tyrant. His name was Perillos, a man of ideas, a sculptor, an engineer, and like many brilliant men, fatally eager to impress. He lived in ancient Athens, but his eyes were fixed on Sicily, where a man named Phalaris ruled the city of Acragas. Phalaris wasn't just a ruler, he was a monster in royal clothing. Known for his cruelty, feared by his own court, he was the kind of man whose name traveled faster than his armies. Perillos had never met him, but he knew what kind of man he was, and he had an idea. What if, he thought, I could give this tyrant something so terrifying, so theatrical, that he would remember me forever? And so, he began to draw. He designed a statue, a bull cast entirely in bronze, life-sized, hollow, detailed with terrifying realism, flared nostrils, curled lips, furious eyes. But the genius, the horror, was inside. The bull was meant to hold a man, and beneath it, a fire. As the flames rose, the bronze would heat, slowly, excruciatingly, roasting the man alive from the inside out. But that wasn't all. Perillos added tubes, curved channels, a sound system crafted from bronze itself. It was built to transform the screams. So as the victim wailed in agony, the sound that emerged from the bull's mouth would not be human. It would be animal. The victim wouldn't just die. He would perform the first ever symphony of torture. Perillos believed he had created art. And so, he crossed the sea to present it to Phalaris. He called it a gift of justice, a tool of fear, a thing of beauty. Let your enemies die not with dignity, but with the cries of cattle, he said. Phalaris stared at the model. He didn't blink. Then he smiled. And that smile, tight, cruel, was the moment Perillos should have run. But he didn't. The full-size bull was forged in secret within the palace walls. No one outside the court knew what was being built. It took weeks, maybe months. And when it was finished, it gleamed under torchlight like a god of death. The door was hidden in the flank. The inside was smooth. The mouth was open, waiting. Phalaris summoned his court. "Let us test this wonder," he said. "Let us hear it sing." But who would go inside? Not a prisoner, not yet. The bull had not been used. It was still a symbol, an unknown. And that's when Perillos spoke, eager, proud, naive. "Allow me to demonstrate," he said. "I shall climb inside and fake a scream, so you may hear the sound for yourself." The room went still. Some say the guards exchanged glances. Others say Phalaris never stopped smiling. Perillos stepped inside. The door closed, and he began. He cried out, mimicking terror, pain, desperation. But what came out was not him. It was the bull. The metal transformed his voice into something monstrous. The court gasped. It worked. Too well. Then silence. From inside, Perillos tapped on the walls. Laughed, perhaps. But no one opened the door. "Light the fire," Phalaris said. The guards obeyed, slowly, silently. The flames licked the bronze belly. The metal grew warm, then hot, then glowing. And Perillos inside began to scream for real. They say the sound was perfect. His voice, his true human voice, was never heard again. Only the bull. When the screaming stopped, Phalaris ordered the door open. They dragged out what was left of Perillos, a man-shaped shadow, charred and blackened. Phalaris had his body thrown from the cliffs. No grave, no name, just ash. That was the first. The Brazen Bull had tasted flesh, and it would not stop. Over the years, Phalaris used the bull to execute anyone he wished. Rebels, priests, lovers, rivals. They were all fed to the flames, and each time the sound echoed across the square. The cry of a beast, not a man. That was its true purpose, erasure. The victim's identity dissolved in fire and bronze. Their words, their name, their humanity, burned away. The crowd wouldn't hear a plea. They would hear an animal, an excuse, and they would look away. Because what was one more bull dying, after all? Some say Phalaris would drink wine as he listened, that he installed the bull in the center of his court so he could admire its curves while plotting his next cruelty. Others say he would have guests over just to demonstrate it, but cruelty always returns to its maker. Years later, Phalaris was overthrown, dragged from his throne, stripped, beaten, begging, and the people knew exactly what to do. They brought out the bull, the same one, the only one, and they lit the fire. The tyrant screamed, but no one knew if it was him or the bull crying out. It didn't matter. He was gone, and justice, in its own twisted way, was served. But the bull survived. No one knows where it went. Some say it was melted down. Others believe it was taken to Rome, or hidden in a temple, or buried beneath the ruins of Acragos. But in whispers, in shadows, its story spread. And in medieval times, far from Sicily, people spoke of a punishment so cruel, so theatrical, that it couldn't possibly be real. Could it? Because who would build such a thing? Who would light the fire? Who would listen and smile? No one knows what happened to the bull. The bronze cooled, the screams faded, and history, as it always does, tried to forget. But legends never truly die. They sink into the soil. They rot in the cracks between scrolls. And then, centuries later, they rise again. Not always in the same shape, but always with the same smell, the stench of burning flesh. The idea of the Brazen Bull, the concept, the cruelty, did not vanish with Phalaris. It mutated, spread, infecting new lands, new rulers, new tyrants who didn't need the original statue, only the inspiration. And by the time Europe entered the Dark Ages, the bull was no longer just a story. It had become something worse, a method, a whisper, a warning. In medieval France, there were rumors of a bishop, bloated with wealth, twisted with power, who had a custom-made iron ox built for heretics. He called it the Mercy Beast. No records survive of its design. But the name appears in 3 separate Inquisition archives, each marked confidential. One man who escaped the bishop's court before his arrest later testified, under torture, that he saw a metal beast large enough to hold a man. That firewood was stacked beneath its belly. That screams were muffled, but not enough. That the bishop kept it in a cellar under his chapel, where God would not hear. The Inquisition denied it. But they would, wouldn't they? In Spain, during the height of the Reconquista, captured Moors were sometimes said to have been burned inside iron coffins, shaped to mock their beliefs. One chronicler described a punishment where the condemned was sealed inside a hollow lion with spiked ribs and roasted while the crowd sang psalms. The lion had no voice box. The screams came out raw, unfiltered, but still, the message was clear. You are no longer a man, you are prey. In Germany, the story warped again. There it took on the face of a metal witch, a statue shaped like a crone, mouth wide open. Her arms were jointed like a puppet. When a woman was accused of sorcery, she was placed inside, and the witch was kissed by flame. As she screamed, the arms flailed, the jaw clanked, and the villagers claimed it was the devil inside her fighting to escape. Some claimed it was a legend. Others swore they'd seen it with their own eyes. The device vanished in the 14th century, but one charred skull, dug from beneath a burned convent, was found fused with flakes of melted iron. No burial, no name, just ash and sound. Always sound. Because that was the curse of the Brazen Bull. Not the fire, not the metal, but the voice. Once it was built, humanity could never unhear it. Even in England, where executions were more often public and straightforward, echoes of the bull remain. In 1258, a blacksmith in Lincoln was accused of forging a forbidden device. Witnesses claimed he was building a bronze calf with a hollow wound. He was arrested before it was finished. His tools were seized, but the designs, they vanished. Some say the device was never meant to be used. It was only a replica, a fascination with the ancient world. Others insist it was commissioned by a nobleman who wanted a new form of deterrence, one so horrible it could silence an entire village. What's clear is this: the idea had survived. The Brazen Bull had become more than metal. It had become myth, a living blueprint of pain passed from mind to mind, reshaped by culture, by context, by cruelty. Because the Middle Ages didn't just reproduce torture, they reinvented it. They turned execution into theater, punishment into spectacle, and nothing fed the appetite of a crowd like fire. The church burned heretics, nobles burned rebels, crowds burned witches. But sometimes a simple pyre wasn't enough. They wanted more. Structure, iron, a mask, a story. So instead of tying someone to a stake, they locked them in. Instead of rope, they used bolts. Instead of flame alone, they added form. The body was not simply burned, it was framed, displayed, sculpted into pain. In Venice, there was a case in 1324 of a merchant accused of poisoning wells. He was chained inside a metal cage shaped like a serpent, a reference to the devil, and hoisted over a public brazier. The fire licked his feet. His screams, they said, were so sharp they pierced the bells of the nearby church. His wife fainted. His son ran into the lagoon. No one stopped it. Because once a man is in the serpent, he is no longer a man. He is an offering. In Hungary around the same time, a rebel leader named István was captured and sentenced to death. The king, fearing martyrdom, ordered a private execution, but not a quiet one. He had a blacksmith construct a giant iron eagle, wings spread, hollowed through the center. István was bound inside. The eagle was lowered onto a bonfire in the courtyard of a mountain fortress. The guards were instructed not to look away, to memorize the screams, and when it ended, to leave the eagle exactly where it stood for others to see. For years, travelers claimed they heard groaning from the hill, metal creaking in the wind, a whisper through the feathers, but no one dared go closer because they knew sound lives longer in metal. But perhaps the most haunting echo of the Brazen Bull came from a monastery in Wales. Quiet, peaceful, devout. Or so it seemed. In 1387, a fire consumed part of the abbey. When the smoke cleared, something strange was found in the rubble. A melted mass of bronze, curved and sculpted, with two horn-shaped protrusions. It was dismissed at first, an ornament, a bell casing, but when cleaned, it revealed something else. A hinge, a cavity, a mouth. There was no record of it being built, no name attached. But one monk wrote anonymously in a recovered parchment, "Forgive us for what we sealed beneath the floor. We were told it would only be used once, but the screams kept coming. Long after the fire died, they came from the walls, from the stone, from us." The manuscript ended with a single line, scrawled in Latin, "Non homo, sed taurus." Not a man, but a bull, and then nothing. The abbey was abandoned 3 years later. No official reason given, but the bells were left behind, and some visitors claim that if you strike them at dusk, they don't ring. They moan. History tries to forget these things. It buries them, melts them, labels them as myth. But the shape always returns. In bronze, in brass, in iron, in nightmares. Because the Brazen Bull was never just about fire. It was about silence. It was about stripping someone of their humanity, of their voice, and turning their death into something unnatural, unholy, a sound that doesn't belong to any living thing, a cry that echoes long after the mouth has burned away. And perhaps that's why we still talk about it, because deep down, we know it could happen again. Not in bronze, not in shape, but in spirit, in any system that turns pain into performance, that punishes for show, that twists the scream into something convenient, something people can ignore, or worse, applaud. But the legacy of the Brazen Bull didn't die with Phalaris. Like fire itself, the cruelty of the device spread, quietly, darkly, across time and borders, carried not just by tyrants, but by anyone who saw pain as power. The Roman Empire, ever hungry for spectacle, is said to have adopted the Brazen Bull, or at least the concept. Their own records tell of bronze and iron constructions used to execute Christians, traitors, and enemies of the state. While not every one of these was shaped like a bull, the idea was always the same. Roast them from the inside out, make the scream sound like something else, and turn death into theater. It wasn't just punishment, it was propaganda. One of the most chilling cases linked to the Brazen Bull is the execution of Saint Eustace. According to hagiographic tradition, Eustace was a Roman general who converted to Christianity. For that, he and his family were sentenced to death by Emperor Hadrian. The method? Being locked inside a burning bronze idol. Some say it was shaped like a bull. Others say it was a giant ox. Either way, the result was the same. A man, a family, burned alive, their cries echoing like animals, while a crowd watched. This wasn't justice. This was a warning to anyone who dared believe something different, to anyone who stood in the way. And the echoes didn't stop there. Centuries later, as the Inquisition swept across Europe, metal torture devices became more and more elaborate. There were iron maidens, spiked chairs, and reportedly at least one version of a Brazen Bull found its way into the collection of a 16th century Spanish inquisitor, though this time not as a device of law, but of personal amusement. The bull wasn't just a tool of punishment anymore. It was an object of fascination, a trophy of domination, a way to show that even the shape of an animal could become an emblem of terror. But perhaps the most disturbing truth of all is this: the Brazen Bull never really disappeared. It simply changed form. During the 20th century, when totalitarian regimes rose to power, the principle of the Brazen Bull, the conversion of suffering into a performance, re-emerged. In Nazi Germany, Soviet gulags, and other authoritarian states, victims were subjected to slow, painful deaths while their agony was recorded, witnessed, or used to spread fear. No bronze statue, no stylized animal. But the core idea remained: turn pain into a warning, make it echo. In that way, Perillos's invention outlived him, and maybe that was always the point. So why does this matter now? Because when we tell ourselves these stories are just relics of a brutal past, we forget that cruelty evolves, that it wears new faces, adopts new technologies, and disguises itself in righteousness. The Brazen Bull may be ancient, but the instinct to humiliate, to torture, to silence, still lives among us. And if there's one thing history teaches us, it's this: monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like rulers, like patriots, like men in marble halls. Sometimes they come smiling with a golden key to a bronze door. The Brazen Bull began as one man's invention, a gift, he claimed, for justice. But what it became was a mirror. And maybe that's why we remember it. Because if we stop telling these stories, we stop seeing the warning signs, and cruelty creeps in again, quietly behind closed doors, until it's too late. If this story haunted you the way it haunted me, don't let it end here. There are more tales like this: forgotten punishments, twisted inventions, strange echoes from the darkest corners of our past, waiting to be uncovered. So if you're still with me now, consider subscribing to this channel. Not just for the horror, but for the history. Not just to remember the victims, but to understand the world that made them suffer. Because sometimes to see ourselves clearly, we have to stare into the fire, even when it screams back. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, stay curious, stay cautious, and never trust a gift from a tyrant.